Video game genres are a mess. Anyone who spent a great deal of time trying to find games on Steam or any of its competitors can tell you this, but the reason for this is that what genre a game is in rarely tells you much about the game. This is due to how genres are classified for games, since unlike most mass-market media, game genres are almost entirely defined by mechanics. Largely, this is due to a lack of narrative in games during their formative years. Now, I know that some of the older gamers in the audience are going to be saying, games don't need to have a story, you can just bog games down, especially on early consoles. To be fair, you're not altogether wrong. The lack of a narrative in a game during the early years of gaming didn't really hurt most individual games. What it did hurt, however, was how games came to be classified. See, in most media, what genre something belongs to is defined mostly by the narrative. Romance, drama, thriller, mystery, and so on. Due to the lack of narrative in games during the early years, they went in a very different direction, being mostly defined by mechanics. Platformer, shoot 'em up, dancing, survival, racing, and so on and so forth. This wound up making game genres into unbelievably broad things that really only provided the loosest aid when it came to understanding what a game was. Tellingly, both Super Mario Bros. And Sonic the Hedgehog, two games with very different mechanics and core engagements, are simply classified as platformers without any acknowledgement of what makes these games stand out from each other. Now, some genres were hit significantly harder by this vague classification system. First-person shooters is the most commonly listed example due to the sheer absurdity of a genre being partly defined by its camera angle. Then there's action-adventure, which is so broad and poorly defined that it can be slapped onto almost any given game without a care in the world, and it'll still fit. However, the genre we're here to discuss today is the RPG genre, which is another one of the genres that was hit the worst by this vague classification system. The problem with the RPG genre is that there's actually 5 different genres that bear the name, plus another 4 that tend to have RPG slapped onto them as well. The 5 main genres are Western RPGs, such as Dragon Age, The Elder Scrolls, Fallout, or Knights of the Old Republic. JRPG, such as Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Wild Arms, or Golden Sun. Strategy RPG, such as Fire Emblem, Disgaea, Jeanne d'Arc, or Final Fantasy Tactics. MMORPGs, such as World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2, Lord of the Rings Online, or DC Universe Online. And Action RPGs, such as Monster Hunter, Dragon's Dogma, the later Deus Ex games, or Lords of Arcana. Now, by now you probably understand the problem I'm getting at here. None of these games are particularly similar, with each having very different reasons to play these sorts of games. And now, I'm sure some of you think I'm exaggerating, but trust me, I'm not. Monster Hunter World and Dragon Quest XI were both running for Best RPG this year, and anyone who's played at both of those games can tell you that they have jack all in common, alright? Now, as for the 4 games that tend to get lumped into the RPG bucket, that would be Soulsborne, which originally did start as part of the action RPG genre, to be fair, though it was later split off, Metroidvanias, roguelites, and roguelites. Now, for those unversed in the latter 2 genres, they are very different things. Roguelikes are a bit more well-defined, whereas roguelites are more varied. Those who are versed in these genres are perfectly aware that none of those genres have much in common, either with each other or with the first 5 genres, outside of some base mechanics in some cases. These all have different core engagements, different reasons you pick up a game in one of these genres and enjoy playing it. So, what the hell happened, and why is the RPG genre so out of hand? Well, something very odd happened in the development of RPG games. See, most genres were either developed in the West and imported to Japan, or developed in Japan and imported to the West. Occasionally you'd see them spring up in both territories at the same time, but they'd have very similar forms of philosophies, like with platformers and shoot-'em-ups. The RPG genre, however, was very, very different. It grew in both the West and Japan at the same time, but took on 2 wildly different identities in each territory, or a wildly different identity in each territory, rather. So different, in fact, that both of the 2 RPG genres that came out of this development phase are flat out named after their place of origin. See, Western culture is built on a sense of individualism and self-expression, and the Western RPG genre reflected that. Due to this, Western RPGs focused really heavily on the whole role-playing part of role-playing games. Western character customization and choice was and is a massive focus for this sort of game. Japanese culture, on the other hand, is more about the group than the individual, and the JRPG genre shows this off perfectly. JRPGs focused heavily on the story aspect of their games, becoming the best place in early gaming to get a great story. Past the NES era, they increasingly focused on having a robust cast of characters, with the focus more on character interaction and development than any choice or customization. At least as far as individual characters go. There is some, but we'll talk about that more in a JRPG-specific episode later on down the line. Anyway, so right out of the gate, you've got two very different genres with mostly the same name. What about the rest? Well, strategy RPGs were originally a spin-off of JRPGs, but they were different enough in terms of even the surface mechanics that they branched off incredibly early. Though character interaction and development would remain a focus, strategy RPGs focus more on grander tales of war and the like, a wider focus. MMORPGs and action RPGs came about as a result of technological advancements and limitations working together in odd ways, creating games that had the surface trappings of the two main RPG branches, such as a leveling system of some sort and some form of character, skill, or equipment customization, but didn't have the deeper story or party mechanics, which are crucial to those first two genres. Now, to be fair, what I've said above isn't some revolutionary exposure of the problems in the RPG genre. These are known issues, and some attempts to more clearly separate the genres have been made. MMORPGs are generally just referred to as MMOs a lot of the time, and SRPGs are sometimes referred to as turn-based tactics, though that name hasn't caught on as well yet. So if all this is known stuff, why am I talking about it? Well, 3 reasons. 1, it's important that it gets talked about by as many people as possible to help raise awareness of the situation. 2, I want to be able to talk about issues within the individual RPG genres down the road, and I can't do that if we don't have a baseline for RPGs established on this show beyond I don't care much for Bethesda RPGs. 3, we're about to try and figure out what makes an RPG an RPG, and we can't do that unless the baseline for the question is established, which I just spent like 6 paragraphs doing. So, what makes an RPG an RPG? Well, the only thing all 5 subgenres have in common is an emphasis on stats and either character, skill, or equipment customization. Story? Nah, most MMOs don't really have a really light story as far as such things go, and action RPGs can actually be worse. Role-playing? Nope, only Western RPGs and some MMOs really focus on that. Characterization? Mostly focused for JRPGs and strategy RPGs, although the better Western RPGs will get in on this as well. So, is that it then? The defining element of what makes an RPG is just a focus on stats and some form of customization? Unfortunately, with how game genres are currently defined, yeah. Game genre definitions are very shallow things right now, but that's why topics like this are important to discuss. We need better genres for our games, but we'll never get them unless we make more people aware of how bad the situation is, make more people want to change and be willing to enact it. Because until then, the core of an RPG is as shallow as stats and some form of customization. This has been For Fun and Profit, and I will see you all next time.